Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe
that. Good time of day, everyone. This is Ethan Castle.
This is Benjamin Castle, and Americans Watching the Footy now has as many episodes.
This is episode 162. It is our round 6 preview. A little programming note, our schedule is going to be a little bit off these next couple weeks because between when people are available, when rounds start, things like that, we're not going to be on our usual Tuesday night round preview. This is a Monday night, so we don't have full lists yet. Going to be a little more speculative than telling you exactly who's going to be in and stuff.
We have learned some information already from coach press conferences, and we'll discuss that, of course.
But yeah, our schedule is different. Benjamin's going to be out of town for the next couple days. So we are recording this. It has just become April 16th, which is Tuesday, and is also pizza day.
Well, here comes a pizza, see it?
I think we've discussed this before. Angels-Red Sox game at Fenway?
2007, baseball game. Just look up Here Comes the Pizza, and you can watch. It's about a 3-4 minute video. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. If you don't want it spoiled, you should skip ahead. But if not, I think it would be fitting if we had something like, if you're at the baseball and you throw your pizza instead of eating it, we'll say, turn it up.
What, do I now have to give the ladder breakdown?
No. What we do have to break down is what's going to be a really fun round.
I see one game right off the bat that I automatically label as a dud.
You got the dud!
And, oh, look, it's the last game. But because
I don't think that's a dud.
I think it can be. I think it can fall flat on its face. The others have more going for them, I think. If the weakest game of the round is compelling because it's a spoon-off, then that's still pretty damn compelling.
Okay, so here's the thing with this round.
Every time you say, here's the thing, I hear we started out friends.
I think at this point, we can declare like a clear 4 non-competitive teams. Injuries have something to do with a couple of those, especially Richmond. It's not that I think Richmond were going to be great to begin with, but 16 misfortunes.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, they've currently got 16 players on their injury list. Anyway, what makes this round so good is that of those 4 teams, 2 play each other, 1 has a bye, and 1's playing in a rivalry
and carrying a bit of momentum into that.
So this should be fun. Here's a tough question. Which game are you least looking forward to this round?
The spoon-off.
Okay, what if you throw the spoon-off out of the equation?
Honestly, maybe actually Western Derby.
Okay, you can't say your own team. Then what is it?
Because of some injury news that we found out, Sydney and Gold Coast. Because one of the players that we really like won't be taking part in that end, won't be taking part for a while. I still want that to become like a more regular fixture. We talked about this. I talked about this last time, that I want the Queensland and New South Wales sides to play each other with a bit more regularity if possible. The Queensland teams need maybe some steadier double-ups. So that's a place where you could fit them in potentially. 3 of the 8 games this round will be reversed later in the season. Before we get to that, though, we got some awards to take care of because we have the nominees, obviously, for Mark and Goal of the Week from round 5. Mark of the Week, your round 4 winner was Dylan Moore over Darcy Moore. More on more violence with big contact. Your round 5 nominees, you had Mitch Owens over Aaron Cadman and Don't Ask What Happened Next.
That's exactly what I wrote on the notes.
I think I described it as Owens going from 0 to 60 to negative 60 in 3 seconds.
Like the most interesting net zero of all time.
At the end of that same game, you had James Peatling intercepting Josh Battle and hanging on despite contact from Darcy Wilson. And then Nick Vlostone, who's taken some good ones over the years, hanging over Tyler Brockman, who was nominated himself a couple rounds prior
and should have won it. Did he?
I believe he did.
I'm going with Vlostone here.
No complaints.
Ranking him
Flostone, Owens, Peatling. I would love for Owens to win just because of how comedic that whole sequence was. I only would remember Peatling's because it was the end of the game. I would only remember Owens' because of what else happened in there. I think I'd remember Flostone's on its own. I think that's a good thing to go by. Hey, y'all done messed up the round 4 goal of the week voting?
Yeah, it was Shea Bolton.
But apparently it was Max King. I mean, impressive to score right off a ruck tap when he actually wasn't in the contest, but Shea Bolton did Shea Bolton things and wasn't recognized for it. For shame, all of you.
Your nominees for this week, you've got Tom Green picking up a Kieran Briggs hit out off of a Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller deflection and kicking with his right. Sam Barry kicking the go-ahead goal off of a Ben Keys handball. And Jack Petrocelli picking up a smooth little crumb from Jack Darling and kicking with his right. I think this is pretty slim pickings. Like, the Barry one's only in there because it was go-ahead goal. I'm going Tom Green. I think it's pretty clear winner, actually. I think Green is definitely the strongest of these, but we've seen game winners get some extra preference from the crowd, so I wouldn't be shocked if Barry ended up winning this. We'll talk more about Sam Barry and how he factored into things for the Crows very soon because they're featuring Friday. Thursday, though, is a battle of 2 and 3s who are next to each other on the ladder in the Saints and Bulldogs, a Marvel Stadium matchup as usual. This will be their 25th straight home and away meeting head-to-head at Marvel Stadium since 2006. Even in 2020?
Yep, round 2. But they did play later that year at the GABA. That was a 6-7 elimination final.
And I can't remember who won that.
Saints won it.
That's right. And then the next week, they lost to Richmond?
I think Richmond, yeah, because Richmond lost their qualifier to Brisbane. As per usual this year, it's a 7:30 p.m. local start, so 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific for American audiences on Fox Soccer Plus.
Last year, the Saints beat the Dogs in round 2, 92-41. It was kind of like damn, these guys might be kind of good, or is their opponent just garbage? And I think the answer was more the Saints were good.
I'd say probably like 75-25, the Saints being good, although the Dogs did not help themselves by kicking 5-11. Sakilda had a 6-goal-to-1 third quarter, and I was surprised at the lack of stamina from the Bulldogs in that game. Dogs midfield will not be as strong entering this one because Tom Liberatore is out with his... Sorry, I'm being told it's an ankle injury. I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again. There were possible things that injury could have been. That was not an ankle injury. Could have been dehydration, something with low blood pressure, but, that's what you came up with was ankle injury? Do better. Gary, what the fuck?
I mean, who knows? Luke Beveridge might have been doing his own thing there. Oh, really funny quote from the comments on the Hoops Crew video in which Paul James called Luke Beveridge their Nuff of the Week. A comment from YouTube user Ferg0998. If it was Chris Scott, he would have said, look, I didn't see it and I shouldn't speak for the medical staff because I'll get it wrong and we'll, from time to time, manage our players, but he'll be out until we're sure he's right. And we don't like putting a time frame on it, and we respect the opposition, but my understanding was it was a minor issue. And then 6 weeks later, he's looking good and should be available. And then in 2 more weeks, maybe he gets selected again.
That was a subpar accent. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. I picture in my head better.
Leave the accent to me. So Libba's out and Caleb Daniel is, holy shit, in. He's confirmed in. Do they play him back or forward, do you think, Ethan?
I'm guessing forward, just thinking about what they've done with, where Bramble fits in and where Richards fits in.
I think that's appropriate, and Daniel did a very good job moving into that forward role last year, the half-forward flank. I hope that's where they put him. If you're trying to decide who's more of a like-for-like, well, there is no like-for-like for Libba because he's Libba, but if you're looking for more of an inside operator, then I would say Riley Garcia over James Harms.
Yeah, and I just have that first game from Harms this year was so bad.
He's responded to it well, but I'd like to see Riley get the shot. I forget if there's a relation there between him and Hugo Garcia, who I would like to see in the 22 for the Saints, after having a decent impact as sub and bringing some heat against the Giants midfield.
Max King is likely out for this week, but his knee injury is not as bad as feared. A lack of structural damage there is a very good sign when initially they were fearing that he may have torn his ACL, as his brother did 2 years ago.
This seems like one of those where if it wasn't a Thursday game, there would be a pretty decent chance of him getting in. I would put him on the doubtful side. In that case, good luck.
Anthony Caminiti and Tim Membry, you've got more important assignments this week. I believe in Membry. I really want to believe in Caminiti. And I also floated the idea of maybe having Zane Cordy as a forward swingman if necessary to match up better with the Dogs' talls.
I think you probably have better options.
I think you do too, but I wouldn't be shocked if Ross Lyon ends up flipping that switch. I wonder if they may also bring in another tall in defense in Dougal Howard in terms of really getting the right one-on-one matchups there against the crop that the Dogs have. Nice to see that Paddy Dow could be available for AFL action as soon as this week. I would imagine he gets time in the twos first, especially when Zach Jones bounced back well from a surprising demotion.
Yeah, that one didn't make sense. I think a less surprising demotion would be if Dan Butler gets bumped out this week. He only had, one disposal, I think?
Yeah, it was not pretty. And you've got some hard runners there in the VFL and on the younger side of the list. As I said, you can elevate Hugo Garcia, give Darcy Wilson maybe more of a midfield assignment.
Garcia drew very positive reviews from this past week. Then again, Lance Collard got subbed in round one and then didn't really get much more run.
He hasn't gotten another run.
And he got decent reviews, maybe not to the level of Garcia, but decent enough that you would have expected something, I think.
The Saints are 3.5-point favorites as we record this on Monday.
Where's that line if Libba plays?
If Libba plays, I think it's close to a push.
I probably would say Bulldogs by a couple points. I love, by the way, just the level that people are through with Luke Beveridge.
We were through in 2022, even after they made the grand final the previous year.
I'm not sure which of these two, but Dylan Bolch and Ben Cotton wrote this week's team tips on Fox Sports, and they start, let's be honest, trying to predict a Western Bulldog side at this point is like throwing darts blindfolded. Like, that's the most, neutral way of saying this guy has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
Friday night footy in Adelaide. Got a lot of that.
It's funny because I was so used to the prior few years, it was basically just the Victorian teams and then occasionally the Swans or Lions, so I am in favor of this. The Crows have another weeknight game in a couple of weeks that I think we're both pretty excited about.
Yeah, Thursday showdown to start round number 8, which is, I think, the closest to a rivalry round that we're getting this year. But are we getting a ruck round? Yes, the sacred ruck round.
That's almost as good as National Tight Ends Day. I need to come up with a stupider one somehow.
International Tall Small Forward Appreciation Day.
Switch hitting corner outfielder day.
Which player do you have in mind?
Shit, I actually got to think about this. Dylan Carlson? Ian Happ? Ian Happ works.
Ian Happ's worth celebrating. Yeah, okay, worth it.
And he's mostly a corner outfielder at this point, so I guess he would work.
And a fellow podcaster.
So, Adelaide hosting Essendon.
Is this the Jake Kelly Cup then?
I guess. 7:10 p.m. local, 7:40 p.m. in the Eastern States, 2:40 a.m. here, 5:40 a.m. on the East Coast. Fox Sports 2. Crows are 1-4 now that they beat Carlton, which is awesome. The Bombers are 3-2 after beating the Bulldogs,
which you labeled as the most surprising result of the round.
Yes.
I just thought matchup-wise they were going to get torn apart.
I still strongly believe that Crows over Blues is the greatest surprise for last round.
I still, though, especially when you factor in injuries and stuff, it's like you can see how that happened. I just think matchup-wise, it's going to be a rough one. Couple of notes on this meeting. So the Bombers have won 6 straight. They actually haven't met at the Adelaide Oval since 2020. I always think of this game being at Marvel, and sure enough, the last 3 times it has.
There was that pretty close, was that a 2022 meeting? Where it was?
Yeah, that was a good game.
Was that 102-99?
103-99. Last year, Essendon won 115-97, where they had a great second quarter and then held on. Well, they had a great first half altogether. They had a 7-5 first quarter and then 5-2 second quarter. Essendon had 21 scores by halftime. That was a fun, chaotic game. The 2021 meeting, 84-21. Crows kicked 1-3 in the first half. That's good, right?
I mean, I've seen worse. Have you? We've had some goalless halves.
I know, but 1-3 seems even sadder than
no goals 5.
I don't seem sadder to me.
I think Port's no goals 5 in that dreary Thursday in 2022 against Melbourne when we were just starting stands out because they had a chance right before the half and then Butters gave up a stupid free.
That's right.
I think that's the sad one there.
Anyway, you know what's not sad?
That Harry Schoenberg's almost back.
Yeah.
Did a rehab assignment in the Sandful. Now, I don't know how much you want to mess with a midfield mix that ended up working this past week for the Crows. Actually,
well, something has to be messed with because Matt Crouch is out a week.
Yeah, they accepted that.
I think we already mentioned that on the prior episode.
Yeah. And again, wasn't as low to the ground as Zach Butters against Bailey Banfield from that same night. So I can see a clear difference there. I would love for Schoenberg to get that opportunity, body up against someone like Zach Merritt or even Sam Durham. Both of these teams inside midfield mixes really surprised me last week. With the Crows, you had all sorts of pieces moving around there. Josh Rochelle and Isaac Reagan getting way more center bounce attendances, whereas Rory Laird played more freely, sometimes off the center square. Sam Barry coming into that mix late and then swinging forward to score the winning goal. And then Essendon, Sam Durham is suddenly a revelation of a physical inside midfielder and paired really well with Jai Caldwell to counter Bonton Lima.
Yeah, just the Crows midfield, not only was it that they were rotating in some of the forwards there, just that they were playing with much more of a purpose. Like everything Rory Laird did actually made sense. Jake Soligo's 27 disposal game was one of the best that I'd seen from him, and I really was talking him up. He did a good job embracing the physicality and not trying to go out of his way to be like a super refined player and just kind of letting his style in the game kind of mesh together, if that makes sense.
I never thought of Soligo as refined, so that makes sense. I mean, not a knock against him that he's not refined. He's just a rugged player that we really enjoy watching.
I want to take a step back, talk about Harry Schoenberg for a sec. What does it look like he does for a living? Because I don't know.
You said he looks much more like a rugby player.
Yeah, but I feel like there's got to be some better answer than that.
We need to put this up like the old Twitter, what he looks like people.
You know what? I just need to find a couple of decent photos of him. I think I got a couple from his Instagram and just ask, I'm going to ask a few people, what does this guy do for a living? If you recall, you know, there was the whole Phil Kessel a few years ago, you know, just like showing people photos of Phil Kessel and just like, what would you guess this man does for a living?
Turns out he's now a 3-time Stanley Cup champion hockey player.
Yeah, some of the best responses. Did he invent some shitty hipster website? Adjunct professor of medieval history? Serial killer? Just a pretty common one.
Yeah. Other than the rest of the midfield mix there, and I would hope that Barry gets into the 22, by the way. I think that's probably the clearest solution, is to bring Barry into the 22, maybe have Schoenberg come back on management minutes as a sub. Last piece of news on the Crows, Patrick Parnell may require surgery on his shoulder. Still awaiting results from scans on that at the time of this recording. We were surprised that he ended up coming into the mix as a smaller defender. Maybe you could have Will Hamill go a little further up the ground and finally bring in Dan Tartan.
I didn't think Hamill, I mean, is he the best option there? Is there...
I'm thinking based on the list this past week. And honestly, before Schoenberg, I would consider bringing in Billy Dowling for his first AFL opportunity before that. Thinking about the two untried players at top level that have been clear highlights in the Crows reserves.
On Essendon's side, we know that Jai Menzies is now going to be out a couple weeks with a shoulder injury. Not that he had been playing that well to begin with. Sounds like Elijah Sadas should get back in. He only played one half in the VFL, which might have been a management thing. And then we'll see about getting Dylan Shield and Tex Wanganeen back from foot injuries. Sadas needs to be in. I think it's time to let him loose, get him into the full 22 and just let him cook, because I think this guy could be really good.
Get him some center bounce time. I would love for Essendon to follow the approach that the Crows do and keep rotating players in and out of center bounces, because we've seen how well Zach Merritt and Nick Martin can operate when they split that time between the center and the forward 50. That's the thing that really stands out for me. And yes, keep playing Martin downfield. You got enough players who can kick out of the back with Dyson Heppel still even. Jaden Laverty's got that potential. And of course, the most prominent of those, Mississauga, Ontario-born Andrew McGrath.
Mason Redmond as well. I mean, he's more of a runner, but he can kick too. I think...
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. Luke Beveridge gave Mason Redmond 4 coaches' votes.
I mean, we don't know officially which coach it was. It could have been Brad Scott, but
no. Such an oddball selection doesn't...
Yeah, the coaches' votes from this past round for Beveridge and Scott both agreed Sam Durham was the best player and Xavier Dersma was the third best. But one of them had Mason Redmond as second best and one had Zach Merritt.
Yeah.
One had Harry Jones as fourth best and one had Kyle Langford. And then one had Jamara 5th best and one had Taylor Duray 5th best. I know he actually like was rated pretty well by computer stuff, but I don't know. I would have gone Jamara, Leba, if we're talking like best Bulldog. I think Jamara got our polished turd vote, right?
He did, even though he kicked inaccurately. I gave like a Jesse Hogan comparison to him, and I still feel strongly about that.
Yeah. No, it was the right call.
Crows are favored by 11.5.
That line really surprises me. I would have probably put us like a goal lower. I think it's just one good win has really shifted the public's perception of Adelaide back to, oh yeah, these guys have a really high ceiling.
Plus home ground advantage.
It's funny that Essendon are 3-2 despite the very unremarkable win over the Saints, a loss to Sydney where they didn't look all that good, and a loss to Port where they really got run over. And I feel like if you told Essendon fans that they could be 3-3 after this week, you know, at the start of the year, probably would have looked at that and said, okay, not great. But I feel like if they lose this one, just with how they've looked, there could be some major like sky is falling vibes for whoever loses this game.
Either the Essendon edge is gone, now they might have to settle for the Essendon Adam Clayton.
Is that a wrestling joke?
No.
Is it a music joke?
Yes, Adam Clayton is the bassist for U2.
Okay, because isn't there also a wrestler named Ad?
Yes, correct.
On this day, I see clearly everything has come to life.
So are they going to be edging Friday night?
Hey, yo. Saturday, though,
this might be the superest of the Saturdays. This is a really spicy set of games. Like, not just like what white people think of as spicy. This is like people that live close to the equator would still think of this as spicy. Because generally speaking, the closer to the equator you are, the spicier food. Not exclusively true, but generally, or at least the tolerance for it.
and there's only one game that's actually considered a rivalry out of this Saturday as well, which makes it all the more remarkable that it's this spicy. I mean, should we consider the battle for the bars a rivalry?
I'd say so. Although I think it's less so when it's at the G. This is one of those games where, like, the vibe is so different based on setting.
Remember last year when Port did, like, the huge caravan from Adelaide?
No.
I think that may have been in part of the agreement that ended up letting him wear the bars at some point. I forget. But they brought a huge number of fans to the G in round 2 last year, and they got absolutely fucking flattened.
They got shitted on.
Yeah. Collingwood by 71. They had 14 different goal kickers and a 21-goal showing overall. The Dacos brothers both had great full field games and each kicked 2. Collingwood had the 7th biggest contested possession differential on record since 1999, plus 57, and yet they were plus 17 in tackles.
And then these teams played again in round 19, and it might have been the game of the year with another signature Collingwood comeback and late Jamie Elliott goals.
Yeah, he had Collingwood's final 2. The Pies came back from down 17 at three-quarter time. I think at that point, that was their 12th out of 16 wins from trailing at three-quarter time. Some insane statistic like that because Collingwood.
So the difference in vibes when this is, first off, an afternoon game versus a night game.
And last year, I believe this was also like an early afternoon game.
Yeah, it's been a few times. I feel like this always seems to get the primetime attention it deserves when it's at the Adelaide Oval. But this one is at the G, and it's an early game, and it's the only time they're meeting this year, huh?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. This is one that should be a double up frequently. You know, I also believe that Port and Richmond need to double up frequently.
Are they this year again?
They are.
Of course. I mean, that's almost as much of a given right now as, well, another game we're going to talk about soon.
All right, so this will be 8:45 p.m. our time, 11:45 p.m. Eastern on Friday night. Locally, it'll be at 1:45 p.m. Saturday, which means if you're in Adelaide, or maybe one of those towns way out in the middle of nowhere in South Australia, 1:15 p.m.
Don't forget about that border county from New South Wales, like where Taylor Walker's from.
Oh, Broken Hill.
Yes, Broken Hill. Good job.
It's funny because I thought of that right off the top of my head because guy I watch on YouTube just did a video taking the Indian Pacific from Sydney all the way to Perth.
And was one of the...
I believe Broken Hill is one of the stops. What really amazed me was just how much fucking nothing there is between Adelaide and Perth. Like, it's really empty.
Finally, we're able to visually understand what it means when 98% of the population lives in 2% of the land area.
Yeah, there's also one stretch where it's so empty that there's like 300 miles of railroad track without a curve. Doesn't have to go around anything.
Guinness World Record?
I think so.
Now, the hype around this game has definitely been tempered by the news of Nathan Murphy's retirement. Concussion panel recommended that. That decision was made official Australian Tuesday.
Once again, disappointing, but not surprising.
Great that he was able to go out a champion, even though he couldn't finish that game. And it's clear how much Collingwood miss without him in there. He was the one to take on the most important one-on-one tall matchups. Darcy Moore had his best work as that ranging loose defender when Murphy was in there. And that's just caused a big reshuffling in Collingwood's defensive ranks that hasn't really been fully solved yet. Sometimes you throw Billy Frampton back to help out. Maybe at some point Charlie Dean could become a stronger key defensive force. I wouldn't be shocked after this retirement if they go after a key defender in the mid-season draft.
I'm a little surprised in hindsight if they didn't try to make a move for Ben Mackay now, knowing what we know now.
Or, I don't think they were gutsy enough to try to swing for Curtin after winning a flag. Imagine that, though, especially once he slid down to pick 8.
Anyway, in terms of more short-term injury stuff, we'll see with Scott Pendlebury coming off that rib injury that took him out at halftime against the Hawks. Nick Dacos was saying, it's possible, just because that's kind of how Pendlebury is.
I mean, there's a reason he's close to 400 games.
Finn McRae was good in the VFL, and Nathan Kruger hurt his calf, so he's out again because, he's always hurt.
Is it time, Ethan? Is it time to transfer the Mr. Glass Bones and Paper Skin title to Nathan Kruger?
I was born with glass bones and paper skin.
Can we have a second one?
I think we need to have one title that needs to be transferred.
Need to give Elliot Yeo a couple more weeks before we transfer it.
And maybe he hasn't earned that emeritus distinction yet. Finn McRae coming back in, not sure how I feel about that. You want some physicality against Port's midfield, and I'm not sure if he's great at providing that. I would hope maybe to get some more midfield time actually into Reith McGuinness, because he's got that bigger body and is able to swing from the forward job back into center bounces.
I just really like what he does in the forward 50, so it's hard to take him out of that.
You could get him onto those immediate contests and send him forward from there. We've seen a number of teams do that with taller options. When Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson both play, sometimes Darcy takes a tap, Jackson's there at center bounce, and then he immediately tries to follow the play into the forward 50.
Port Adelaide injury report, not much there other than that Travis Boak might come back from his back injury. Jed McEntee got subbed out during their win over Freo, so maybe he gets replaced by Francis Evans or Josh Sin. I think Boak for McEntee might be the only change, though.
I'd be all right with that. Boak can have some of that half-forward job as well as Ollie Wines. I want to see how both these teams manage the wing, because you've got the older group there for Port in, really that Wines and Boak duo, and then maybe Jace Burgoyne coming into things later on in the game up against probably Josh Dacos there, and maybe Bobby Hill doing some wing running as well. And I've been thinking about this with Bobby to try to get him more involved by maybe giving him some more wing possessions. I think that makes sense.
Quick question before we move on.
Is it about this line that Collingwood's favored by 4.5?
No, I think that seems appropriate. Yeah?
Yeah. What's the question?
You guess the attendance for this game. We are just whoever's closer wins. We will not be doing Price is Right rules. Just whoever's closer wins.
64,358.
63,855.
Wait a second, Ethan. Figure out why I chose that number.
Oh, I just got it.
Who's number 46,853?
My favorite prime number. I love 97. I love 13. I love the small ones. 46,853. Carlton and GWS is a double up for the 4th straight year.
Funny, early last year, was thinking man, why the hell are we doing this? What is your obsession with this? And then it turned out to be pretty good. Well, at least the second one was.
Honestly, the first one had more in it.
The first one kind of just for most of the game put you to sleep and then had a dumb ending.
But we realized going through things is wow, there's a lot of list overlap here between the Blues and the Giants. A lot of players going from the Giants to the Blues, for example, Zach Williams and Caleb Marchbank. But you were thinking more about that round 3 game last year when it came to putting people to sleep. When the teams combined to score 1 goal 9 in the third quarter, it will do that. And then the Blues took the lead for good thanks to an arms out descent. I thought that was dead.
It wasn't then. I think it is now.
Not a well-umpired game in general. The other thing that I really remember from that game is Nick Newman shutting down Toby Green.
Hello, Newman.
I think that was the game there in round 3 that made me realize, wow, Nick Newman has some real potential here to be like the perfect sleeper pick. Even at age, 30, I think, last year? We did name him the best number 24 of the AFL. That second meeting, round 24, that was the final home and away game of the season. No Sam Taylor? No problem? Or did the Blues not care once Charlie Curnow wrapped up his Coleman meta?
I think it was a little of both.
Well, no Sam Taylor again this time.
Yeah, he got concussed. Kingsley said he's still dealing with a little dizziness. The most logical in would be Nick Haynes, I think, just going off like who's your most experienced defender. But this team could go in a different direction, you know, between both Peatling and perhaps O'Halloran showing off their ability in the back.
I would think O'Halloran's less likely to go to the back with Stephen Canelio also out with a minor MCL tear. You think back to the elimination final last year, and it was O'Halloran who had that time in the middle and running through half forward, where you would have really expected Canelio to have had that assignment otherwise. I think the responsibility will fall more on Jimmy Peatling, and I would expect Nick Haynes, who could be a tall defensive reinforcement there, and he would be coming back for the first time since the birth of his daughter. I also think that means that Harry Himmelberg will have a more pressing one-on-one assignment. Pretty obvious there, that would be just Himmelberg with the number 2 job after Jack Buckley.
That would make the most sense, but I think they also like Himmelberg in that, you know, as kind of a ball mover.
But Haynes has also had the ability to do that as well with time on the wing. How much time in the back does Lachie Whitfield have that also? A lot of things here to solve, and I don't really know what the answer is for any of them. We haven't seen both these players out at the same time, I think, before. So what Adam Kingsley does here will be really telling. If you are looking for a more seasoned player in the midfield, though, for the Giants, Callan Ward probably returns at last from the AC joint injury he suffered in the opening round.
Carlton's going to have some changes as well, most likely. All three of Adam Chera,
Not Woof,
Mitch McGovern, and Adam Saad
Woof,
dealt with hamstring injuries either before or during the game last week. Alex Chincata was managed in the VFL.
He can have that carrying job as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him.
Jackson Binns, Lockie Cowan, David Cunningham, and Jesse Motlop are all logical candidates. I know Motlop plays further forward than any of the guys that he would be replacing, but I think he should be in just because he's good. I think he fits really well with what they try to do, and I think that's what I would do at least.
Slide Cottrell back, maybe sit Corey Durden for a week if it's really needed based on what you're doing defensively. As much as I think Durden's done a sufficient job this year, I mean, we both very, very highly rank Jesse Motlop, so he should get preference there. This is another one where I think the lines were really tough to judge before we have the full list picture. The Blues are currently favored by 3.5. I know that you, Ethan, made a strong case that with how Carlton took things on the chin last week, you thought that they set themselves up psychologically for a clear bounce back game.
I'd be shocked if they don't win this. I don't know by how much. I get why the line's a little low, but yeah, I'd be shocked and very happy if they lost. But if they win, then I can enjoy the Cats being the last undefeated team for at least a couple hours.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
I'm going to borrow something that you did in the past, Ethan.
Okay.
I'm going to recite our social media plug in a quarter of a second.
That was important.
I also didn't want to waste too much time because you had a really good segue from the last preview before the break, that being GWS and Carlton. You said that if the Giants lose, what could you celebrate?
Geelong being the last undefeated team for a couple hours.
Are you not feeling optimistic about this trip to the Gabba?
Does anyone ever feel optimistic about a trip to the Gabba?
In finals, maybe.
This is, for the second year in a row, the only meeting between these two. Second year in a row, they will only meet at the Gabba. And the year before that, they only met at Cardinia, so It'll be weird.
Well, they also did meet another time in 2022, or actually the Lions hardly fucking showed up.
Yeah, anyway,
FS2 broadcast, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, 7:30 p.m. local time in Eastern Australia. Lions solved a lot of their problems this past week against Melbourne, really attacking the midfield, slowing the game down a lot.
If they play like they did this past week, there are only a couple of teams that can beat them on their very best day. So hopefully that's not sustainable. Hopefully that's an anomaly.
Hopefully
it's not sustainable over more than a few weeks, but it's definitely sustainable for a couple weeks.
Hopefully Mark O'Connor can get in and lock down on Lachie Neale.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the no-brainer call.
I mean, we thought that in the past, and then O'Connor has had less of a tagging job than we thought on a few occasions.
So the Lions come in at 2-3 off back-to-back wins. They're up to 10th. The Cats are 5-0. They're in second after handling North just like they were supposed to. The only time these teams met last year, Brisbane got up big and then held on. Cats only had 1 goal until late in the third. Brisbane ended up winning by 11, and yet I still came away from that game thinking, like, Brisbane didn't do much to win it. We just didn't take advantage of opportunities. But yeah, I remember being very unimpressed. That game was absolutely there for the taking.
And I went into that game with such high expectations. Round 19 had really delivered the past couple of years, and then that just kind of fell flat. I mean, that was also soured by Will Ashcroft tearing his ACL.
Yeah, that sucked.
He's still got a couple months before he's due to come back, I believe. Tom Duday should be back sooner than he is. Though I think the Lions are all right defensively now for the moment, especially if Ryan Lester keeps up with his roving defensive job. One of the more impressive games out of him in both far memories, I think, where he was able to work on Jacob Van Rooyen early and then had more responsibility carrying out of the back, I think, toward the second half. The Lions are also coming in bagged up for this game, in addition to those ACL injuries that I've mentioned. I mean, those have been around. New information, though, Zach Bailey is out 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. That one just depresses me because he's probably my favorite Brisbane Lion.
Mine is Cam Rayner.
I have nothing against Rayner. I've just gravitated toward Bailey very quickly in 2020 and 21, and that was even before his siren goal. I always talk about players who can break structures, go back and forth between various lines really easily, and Bailey's able to do that. Had thought of this as like a potentially really big breakout game for him because I wasn't sure if Geelong would be able to keep up with him in some respects, and then won't even get the chance. Lions will get Connor McKenna back at some level this week, coming back from his hamstring injury. I could see him coming in right away. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Possible.
Charlie Cameron is currently fronting the tribunal, and we've got some great excerpts so far. The Lions lawyer referenced the definition of exemplary in the Macquarie Dictionary.
Macquarie, I think.
And is saying that he's played 200 games and hasn't been suspended yet as a reflection of his character. Also, Timmy Hodges from Fox Footy is also enjoying schnitz tonight.
I love how every time Zeta has to cover the tribunal, he changes his profile now too, because his profile picture is now just like him exasperated from a few weeks back, realizing, fuck, I got another one of these to cover.
Schnitz, actually, like, this shit looks really good.
And prices look reasonable, especially from our American perspective. I think we definitely need to...
we will definitely be going to Schnitz.
We should do it during a tribunal session.
Yeah,
during our trip. I mean, it's gonna happen on a Tuesday during our pilgrimage. It'll happen. And then wait, oh my god, I didn't realize
he's even got it in his bio now
that he loves schnitz. Yes,
what a guy.
I really want to meet this guy.
Other things, we got him visit obviously like a Coles and a Bunnings,
but just like all the Australian standards. I mean, we'll get more on that when that pilgrimage comes.
I'm trying to think of other things off the top of my head. Red Rooster.
Actual Macca's.
Yeah. It's funny because there are like actual nice restaurants I definitely want to do. Like there's this Southeast Asian one that's going to be doing a thing like at GMHBA Stadium that now I am all in on called Chin Chin.
We also must pay our respects by going to Entrecote.
Yes.
Okay, which one of us is going to be Stephen May and which one's going to be Jake Melksham?
I don't know.
Other big question about the Brisbane Lions, going back to the list talk here. They use their sub this week?
it was going to be James Tunstall, and then he just kind of was big chillin'.
James Tunstall was ice cream.
I said big chillin', not big chilling.
Our first unused sub of the year. I think total counting finals, we had 4 last year.
I don't remember most of the others.
There was Ryan Clark, Aaron Francis, Josh Shackey, and one more.
I definitely remember Shackey.
Well, it was finals, that's why.
And Clark was in the draw, wasn't he?
Yes, which just made it all that much weirder that you wouldn't have him try to lock down with a tag late. Maybe that was a real sign there that he'd get delisted when he wasn't even brought in for that. So whereas you have the Lions getting more banged up, by and large, the Cats are getting healthier.
Patrick Dangerfield's probably back this week. He's coming from a minor hamstring injury.
Managed him that extra week because why did you need him against North? I would say right now, either Zach Tui or Jai Clark would make way.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. I mean, maybe just manage somebody else. Gary Rowan played in the VFL. The forward line's been so good that he's hardly guaranteed a spot right now. You know, again, there are so many chances to just manage somebody. Like, maybe, you know, you could always manage Mitch Duncan for Dangerfield.
I think he's the only one that I'd consider manage. I don't even think I'd consider managing somebody this week, though.
Yeah, I don't think I would either, but I'm just at the point where I'm going to trust what management is doing. And then I'm sure after about like 5 seconds of lists coming out in a couple nights, I'll be like, what the fuck? That's usually how these things go. But like, I have no reason to not trust them considering their track record with when this team has been able to stretch guys out and not play with their backs against the wall.
The Lions are barely 3-goal favorites at home. It's a Lions home game. They seem to have figured things out in the middle.
I'd be shocked if they go to 0-3 at Gaba. That's the biggest reason.
It's funny because I could see them being 2-4.
But if they had lost this past week, I would have been even more concerned about this game. But even if they don't play as well as they did, between that and the Cats being due for a loss, and I'd be very, very surprised with the win here. I'd give it like a 20% chance. And I feel like that's reasonable. Squiggle, which I know Rory Kirkpatrick does a lot of stuff with, has the Lions at 64%. Squiggle also currently has the Cats projected as number 1 on the ladder, just a hair ahead of the Giants by 0.2 wins, you know, for the projected end of season ladder.
Currently on AFL tipping, 73% are taking the Lions.
Yeah, I think a 20% chance of winning this game is fair. But I love that they're in a spot where it's not a must-win game. Last year, everything became a must-win game.
40 minutes after the bounce at the Gaba, Western Derby 58 will begin. This is the West Coast Home Derby at 6:10 p.m. local time in Perth, so 8:10 p.m. Eastern in Australia.
So Freo have a pretty lengthy stretch without home games because they had the couple in Adelaide and now this, even though, yes, they will be at home the next couple weeks.
For Americans, 6:10 Eastern, 3:10 Pacific in the morning. Eagles 1-4, having started a real positive trend with the first half of the Swans game before losing some steam, and then carrying it through almost all of the game this past week against Richmond. The Dockers, I would say, were very high on the deserve to win a meter in both their games in Adelaide and left South Australia with 2 losses.
Well, this past week, I thought they had the best 2 individuals in the game, but I thought
Alex Pearce and Josh Tracy.
Yeah, and I do think from, a team standpoint, Port had more depth contributions.
Still feel for them with the way that game against the Blues ended, though.
Oh, I totally do. I think they're going to come into this game pretty angry and ready to do. Ready to... What the fuck was it?
Ready to do.
Keep that in.
I don't think I will.
Yes, they are ready to do.
Ready to do what?
Do. They're ready to do. That's the way I said it. All right, to try to be more articulate here, they're going to come in angry,
ready to lay their opponents out on the ground.
Yeah, and as long as they don't let that get the best of them, I think they'll be fine. Look, I don't think the Eagles will come in lackadaisical or anything. I think they'll be fired up because, when's the last time they've won back-to-back games?
When's the last time they won a derby? First meeting of 2021. So after winning 11 straight Western derbies, The Eagles have now lost 5 in a row, starting with their last hurrah game in round 22 of 2021, where Caleb Sarong really put it away with with the goal of the year.
I still think back to that, and I still just think, the crowd wasn't as like fiery as you would have liked. And maybe it's just, I think this should easily be like the next best non-Victorian rivalry to Showdown. But I think there's been such a big gap just in terms of, people seem to not hate each other enough. Come back here and kill each other. I mean, I look at like how great Showdown crowds have been and the level of animosity and fire there.
I think it's going to take both these teams being good at the same time for that to happen.
Maybe it's also just like the nature of the fan bases, or I don't know, outside of 2020, I've never seen like Optus Stadium feel like a real like cauldron.
2020, really, with half full crowds?
Yeah, that was intense. Like, I think back to the final, the Collingwood one there.
It's Collingwood. That kind of explains a lot of it.
But it wasn't just that. It was also just like a great environment.
Last year, I think the Eagles came in ready to do in round 3.
This is going to stick. This is going to be a new expression. You'll listen back to it and you'll think it's really funny, just the way it came off.
That round 3 meeting last year ended up being a 41-point Dockers win, and there was a lot of scoring from turnovers. Caleb Sarong cooked and feasted, and the Eagles managed to stay reasonably competitive despite losing all of Luke Shuey, Jeremy McGovern, Alex Witherden, and Jamie Cripps in that order between the early second and middle third quarter.
Yeah, and just they didn't have a team at that point.
And it was really that way for the rest of the year. Hey, they were 1-1 entering that game. There was hope. Not much of it, but enough to say there was hope and not completely lie.
I put hope in there. Hope. Don't spend it all in one place, Raggy.
Then in round 22, Frio by 101. It was 85-4 in the Dockers' favor in the middle quarters, and they set the record for their largest derby win. Do you remember anything about that second derby?
I remember it was ugly.
The only other thing I remember is that the Glendinning Allen Medal was won by Lockie Schultz on a countback, and they actually announced that it was a countback.
How does that even work?
I think it's like whoever gets the more higher votes, I forget.
So basically a tiebreaker.
Yes.
Okay, because like a countback makes you think like recount.
Well, when you only have like 3 to 5 people voting on these things, how would you need a recount?
1 for Martin, 2 for Martin.
Frio didn't lose anyone to injury this past week. That's a positive. Maybe this is the week Sean Darcy gets back in. I feel like it's probably a good time after Bailey Williams actually played really well for the Eagles. Is it fair to call him their barometer?
To call Bailey J the Eagles' barometer? I wouldn't be opposed to it, considering how terrible he was at the start of last year.
You know the term that they used on Baseball Barbacast for barometers, right?
Remind me.
Barometer bonds. Clever, isn't it?
Yeah. If there's anyone else that I would say is an Eagles barometer, maybe someone like Jack Petrocelli?
I don't know, but I think this is a good time to try to get Darcy in there. Plus that, I think you could try just some stuff with Luke Jackson on Harley Reid, which I think would be a really good and entertaining matchup. I think, like, if you're looking for
like a less orthodox matchup, but I would love to see how
you put on him.
I mean, my first thought would just be to try to see how Andrew Brayshaw could match up directly against him in the middle, but I like the idea of having a bigger body on him.
And then, not sure what the timeline is, but that hamstring injury to Michael Frederick was pretty minor.
Ready!
I don't expect any other changes, and I expect Jaker O'Meara to not play a full game again. What is this, 4 in a row?
Well, Carl Warner could come back in. He's going to be out of concussion protocols.
So what, does he get subbed out for O'Meara on managed minutes?
I don't know.
Maybe, do we need to take odds on whether or not O'Meara plays a full game?
Whatever. Say no.
Well, whatever Nathan Brown would say, do the opposite.
Okay, so let me try to do the math here. The way Australians do it, I would say yes, he plays a full game plus 130, no, minus 150, which would mean you would put that as $2.30 for yes and $1.67 for no, I guess. Yeah, I think those are fair odds, right?
I don't object.
If you get Warner back in, maybe you take out, like, I don't know, Ethan Hughes. He wasn't especially good last week.
Quieter start to the year for my 2023 sleeper.
Maybe, I mean, I like Joshua Draper. I would keep him in. Maybe Matthew Johnson comes out. He could be seen as more expendable.
Okay, O'Meara into the 22, but then he gets subbed out.
And then there's the question of what do you do with Neil Erasmus, because this just isn't good for a guy's development.
Start him this game, and then bring O'Meara in for him.
First off, found a tweet from Rudy Edsall. Is there a name in the AFL with more South African cricketer energy than Neil Erasmus? I would contend not. And then from Freo fan Chris Reed, Erasmus played 35% of round 1, didn't play round 2, played waffle round 3, traveling emergency and didn't play round 4, and played 15% in round 5. So what do you do there? Do you just give him a bunch of time in the waffle? Do you give him a bunch of AFL time? Because this sort of role is not proper for a 20-year-old.
I think let Erasmus run on the wing opposite Jeremy Sharp and leave Freddie out for another week so he can manage that hamstring.
Also, I just found out he was born in Johannesburg and he did play cricket like at the junior level. So that really fits.
A lot of questions for the Eagles coming into this game. They lost Luke Edwards in game for the second straight week, this time to concussion. And Ryan Merrick was the sub. I would like for him to stay in. From there, though, a lot of options. Locke Rawlinson was the sub in the Gather Round and then did not play this past week, so he is yet to see the 22 at AFL level. If you're looking for a good matchup on the outside, I would love for Harvey Johnston, pick 49, to get opportunity. When I went back and looked at what I could from the waffle, Johnston stood out for his ability as an outside mid. I think I compared him to Hugh McCluggage in the recap, and I think that's a decent comp. And then, what do you do in defense? Because Alex Witherden was a late in when Callum Jamieson did his hamstring this past week. Didn't mind Witherden in defense, was glad to see him back in there, having more of a steady D50 job over Tom Cole. And whereas Cole could do some kicking toward the forward 50, I'd rather take him out and let Liam Ryan have opportunity from halfback, because that also worked in the waffle.
As like a ball mover, or?
Yeah, ball moving halfback.
See that?
Look, he's always been...
Kind of slingshot him.
Yes, exactly. You can think of him as more of a Brad Close type role from years past before he had the forward time.
Here's my thing with like Witherden. Do you look at him as still like a guy who could be like a long-term piece?
I see him as longer term right now than Tom Cole.
Okay, because I actually thought Tom Cole was kind of decent this past week, and actually Liam Ryan would kind of get in the way of some of Tom Cole's stuff if he plays kind of as halfback.
Cole's a little older and has more injury concerns than Witherden, so there's still something to be sorted out there. Freo are favored by 33.5. I do not mind that. I just hope that the Eagles continue trying to match up on the inside, and they'll have to learn things the hard way about which battles to pick. But considering the strength that the Dockers have through the middle, I think this is a good test for where they are right now.
What's the most the Eagles could lose this game by where you still come out of it with like a positive outlook?
You see, that's a tough one because I could see them losing stamina and getting blown out late. Like, I could understand an 8-goal loss if Freo gets some late ones.
Okay, so the game needs to be competitive for what, 3 quarters?
Competitive into the first part of the fourth at least. All right. I'm less enthused about the 2 Sunday games, but there's still a lot of things that they have going for them.
I'm kind of actually looking forward to the spoon-off, winless battle, whatever you want to call it, more than I should be.
The Tasmanian timeshare tussle?
Yeah.
But that's the late game. First, at 1 p.m., so 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on Saturday night for us here in the U.S., you got the Swans and Suns at the SCG.
So my thoughts on this game, now that I think about a big picture, this is going to probably tell us one of 2 things. Either it will tell us that the Suns are here and it's time to take them seriously, or that they're still a year or 2 away. And then from the Swans, it's, those couple weeks before the bye, do they actually have anything to be concerned about, or are they in good shape?
I believe the Suns beat the Swans at the SCG in 2022?
That sounds right. I will check Final Siren while you talk about the 2023 meetings.
Yeah, this was a double up last year. Round 1, it was a 49-point win for the Swans on the Gold Coast. Sydney had a whole bunch of handball overlaps, and Tom Papley really shone there. Round 22 at the SCG, it was a 4-goal win for the Swans, and they really had to fight for it because the Suns led at quarter time and halftime. Isaac Heaney and Matt Rowell both had great moments in contest, but the class of Will Hayward really shown through in that later meeting because he kicked 4 goals straight from 16 disposals.
So yeah, it was 2022. The Suns beat the Swans at the SCG. They also beat them at Metricon in 2021. They beat them at the SCG in 2020.
This is a much more even series than I realized then.
Well, all time, it's 12-4 in favor of the Swans, but those 4 Suns wins have all come since 2018, and 3 of them have been at the SCG. The one time they beat them at home was that game in 21.
After a reasonable test in their first games and much less of one in the second, I'm excited to watch how the group of academy inclusions in Jed Walter, Ethan Reed, Will Graham, and Sam Closey take on the Swans. I think Closey's going to have a lot less room to run. Can see Braden Campbell try to match up against him, close some things down on the outside.
That said, this is a ground where you'll have some room on the outside.
I mean, it's a pretty circular ground, all things considered, but smaller in terms of overall area. At least the camera angles here are better than Mount Barker.
Yeah, at least getting both your arms chopped off is better than dying. Angus Sheldrick might be ready. He's coming back from a finger injury.
Don't expect many changes, though.
Well, I don't know. Maybe because they didn't play too well in either of their games going into the bye. Now, if Angus Sheldrick has a finger injury, does former Colorado Avalanche and Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman Jeff Finger have a Sheldrick injury?
That is not a name I've heard in a long time. Wow.
It's not a name I'd even thought about in a while either. When I saw Finger, I thought of it. Oh, he's from the Upper Peninsula.
Yooper. They got some interesting vocabulary up there.
They're basically Canadian. We should give them back to Canada. On the Suns side, one very disappointing piece of news. We knew Malcolm Rosas had a hamstring injury. We didn't know the severity. 8 weeks. That sucks.
Yeah.
I just like watching him play.
A little reckless at times, but can craft some really nice kicks as well.
You got some Hollywood to him.
And when I was thinking about potential replacements for him, my mind went to the last Suns draftee from this past year, Jake Rogers, pick 14, who has that similar midfield stamina. Now, I don't think he has maybe the forward craft that Rosas might, but I think this would be a good test for him, especially try to get some extra bodies in the middle and then maybe try to get on some more overlap from there, especially if you're trying to still keep Sam Flanders toward the back.
It's too bad Jake Rogers didn't play against the Hawks, because then you could have had 2 guys with baseball names.
Dylan Moore.
Exactly. And then Rory Atkins and Ben Long have been good in the VFL. Speaking of VFL, Sean Lemons just got 4 weeks for a dangerous tackle down there.
Whoa, I did not see that footage. How about
I didn't think it was that bad. I didn't think it was 4 weeks. Oh, VFL reminds me. That's what I wanted to mention. The real winner for Mark of the Week should have been James Willis in the VFL.
Still not as good as that guy from the Norwood under 18s.
Yeah, but this is like the next best thing.
Yeah, got some additional height on there too.
I need to show more people that Norwood mark though, just because this is what high school age kids do in Australia.
They're better than you.
Swans are 19.5 point favorites, which seems very appropriate. Yeah?
I might have put this a smidge lower.
Like what, 17.5?
Yeah, I think still within 3 goals, but the Rosas injury makes me reconsider a little bit. I'm really looking forward to Matt Rowell and James Rowbottom battling in the middle. If there's a midfield matchup that could leave a crater in a footy ground, I think it's this one.
Yeah, and it's not like Rowbottom is on Rowell's level, but I think he's the right matchup if you're the Swans, because he kind of is a perfect foil to the things Rowell does. It's like he's not going to have anywhere near as much of the ball, but you just want a dude who can tackle people.
Game on.
Yeah. And for the final game of the round, the Tasmanian Timeshare Tussle, a game that I'm actually kind of excited for. North hosting Hawthorn at Marvel. This should not be the final game of the round. The final game of the round, if we were doing it like, NFL, Sunday Night Football, I think it would probably be Collingwood and Port. Or even Geelong and Brisbane.
I honestly would have expected a Sunday Western Derby at first.
I would have been down with that.
Especially because that would have been a real Sunday night viewing time for the Eastern audiences too. They would have put that on the later side.
Yeah, so I guess the way you could have done this would have been have the Swans and Suns as the other Saturday nighter, and then have North and Hawthorn as the first game Sunday, and then the Western Derby. But this works. Again, not the most appealing matchup in terms of either of these teams having a prayer of playing finals, but I'm excited because it's the last 2 winless teams, and I think there will be some frustration and tension on display. And of course, it is the Tasmanian Timeshare Tussle.
Chance of a draw?
I was going to get to that. There's a 99% chance if you look at the probability that one of these teams gets their first win, but that other 1% is a really hilarious outcome.
A draw and a spoon-off would tickle my ribs a lot.
11 p.m. our time, 2 a.m. on the East Coast, 4 p.m. at Marvel, Fox Soccer Plus. This is, of course, a double up. They will also play in round 24 at UTAS.
This is a pretty frequent double up as well because
I think it kind of has to be just because at least until things change, they need to play once in Tasmania, once on the mainland.
And I imagine that once the Devils come in, they'll be doubling up against these teams pretty frequently, to start with at least.
I think it would give North something of a real rival because, they don't... Who's their biggest rival? Is it
Essendon, I guess?
But they're how far down Essendon's list of rivals? 5th? Because I think, Essendon's got Collingwood, they got the Ruston, Richmond, Hawthorn, and then maybe there. The Bellydogs, you could even make a case for over them.
You could make a case for Geelong with the country game.
But yeah, I guess now that I'm looking at it, it's weird that Hawthorn doesn't have the typical late season Tasmanian game against the Bulldogs. They actually only play the Dogs once, and it's in a couple of weeks. And it's just a normal Marvel game? Wow, that's strange.
Yeah.
Anyway, these teams will meet, like I said, round 24.
That would make this a double up in 3 straight years, and it was also one in 2019 as well.
It would be really funny if the schedule makers do this perfectly and this ends up being a tank bowl at the very end of the season.
The disgrace of Launceston?
Yes.
Well, we'll see how the draft class sorts itself out during the year.
I just realized, I've thought about how own goals aren't really a thing in footy.
I remember one time I think Liam Stalker accidentally kicked an own goal, but it was only worth a point.
Harvey Gallagher a couple of weeks ago had that run.
Sounds right.
First couple bounces. Anyway, because what you would do really is if you kick into the wrong goal, maybe they'd call it deliberate and then they'd give the other team a kick in the goal square. But what if they're also trying to lose? So then they intentionally miss out on the ball or they try to take it back to their own end. I want this to happen.
This seems like a Barbados golden goal quantity.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. One of the other weirdest soccer things that's ever happened.
Just watched the secret base weird rules thing on it. Basically, there was a time when, for some reason, this tournament decided, golden goals should count for 2. And shenanigans ensued at the end of the group phase. Last year, they played in Launceston in round 3, and Hawthorn won by 19. North really struggled without Luke Davies-Uniacke and Jai Simpian. In round 18 at Marvel, Hawthorn won by 6 goals. And Finn McGuinness successfully tagged Harry Sheasel from the second quarter. That also helped Hawthorn get onto a stretch where the ball really lived in their forward half, and they scored 8 of the game's next 9 goals. So I would imagine McGuinness gets that tagging job and sort of a defensive forward role. I don't expect him to kick 3 goals again, though.
That would be cool.
I wouldn't mind, especially because a lot of people wonder if he still has a place in an AFL side outside of just being an above-average tagger.
I think he's more than an above-average tagger.
It's interesting because last week he started with that defensive forward assignment and Sam Stupid Sexy Flanders still got a whole bunch of the ball, and yet McGuinness still did a good job in a different way.
Also, you made it sound like he's older than he is, if he has a role besides as a tagger. He's 23.
It just seems like he's got a very specialty job at this point, though. We'll see if Sam Mitchell might open up his game a bit more. Thankfully, Colby McKercher was cleared of any damage to his ribs after being subbed out down at Cardinia Park. Pick number 2 should come back in. Maybe a former top 5 pick could come back into the midfield mix too in Will Phillips. Especially with how quiet Hugh Greenwood was, I think that might be.
Yeah, he was really just out. I hardly noticed him outside of when he was the secondary rock, which is too bad because I like Hugh Greenwood.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation there, but I'd be okay with him going out for Phillips there. And we'll see if Liam Shields and Cam Zurhar come back. I think Zurhar would definitely be the more important in there. Both of them coming back from calf injuries.
On Hawthorn's side, Luke Bruce is going to be out another couple weeks with his groin injury. Ned Reeves got concussed in the VFL. Not that I think Lloyd Meek's position should have been in any question to begin with. I am a Lloyd Meek enjoyer.
I'm with you.
And then Chankwath Jaff is going to play in the VFL, and hopefully he doesn't get hurt again because he's had enough, glass bone, paper skin stuff.
Especially his hamstring.
He's had a weird chain of hamstring injuries.
It's only something that I would have expected from a West Coast Eagle. And we like CJ. We messaged with him a bit.
Seems like a really neat guy, really fun player to watch. I am a supporter.
I would love for him and his brother to face off at some point soon. But there got to be some changes for the Hawks, even with the lack of injuries. Harry Morrison was making his case in the VFL, and with how just flat the midfield has gone for the Hawks to start the year, there's something that's got to give there. I don't think Connor Nash is going to be dropped just yet.
Yeah, I think they think of Nash as too important big picture. The only way he'd be dropped would be if he was, managed for a week.
But one of Sam Butler or Henry Hustwaite, who were the sub duo there, I think could make way. And there's a way in there that you can get Morrison the time that he deserves. That's the first change that I would make.
Harry! I don't trust like that.
All right, so things I'm excited about here. Young guys with a chance to prove themselves. And I think just a lot of frustration. Like, I think Nick Larkey versus James Sicily could get pretty nasty.
Well, we'll see how much it's Larkey versus Sicily, or maybe Larkey versus Frost.
We haven't had really much Frost ball yet this year. He's just kind of been there, which is disappointing.
If there's a game where Nick Larkey kicks 9, it's this one because Sam Frost is just a doofus against him.
I love that we aren't thinking it would happen against the Eagles because Jeremy McGovern's been that good.
Well, until he does his hamstring.
I'm actually just weirdly excited for this game. And not from a sicko's perspective.
I think the best way to think about this game is just to go into it with a very open mind.
Yeah, I just want to see which young guys stand up.
Which of the youngsters are going to stay in? Will Hustwaite get another opportunity? Might we see another surprise there, like somebody else who debuted last year for the Hawks, like Bailey McDonald? I forget if what he's been doing as of late, but that's just a name that stuck out. Unfortunate that Nick Watson won't be good to go for this game, because I think this would have been just a spot for him to get a lot of the ball and wreak havoc in a fun way. And then we'll see how much Alistair Clarkson backs in another one of those young players in Tyler Sellers, who only got some touches very late against the Cats, but I think having a second tall in there could help open up things for Larkey.
I also like the way Paul Curtis has been able to play off of Larkey.
I honestly would not mind. I'm not sure if Sellers has the skill level for this, but maybe try to get Sellers to do a neutralizing job on Sicily so that Larkey can take advantage of Frost.
I have one other North observation. There's no way Darcy Tucker's actually 6 feet. He looks way shorter. I noticed that this past week, and I just checked his height.
I mean, does Harry Sheasel look 6'2"?
I could totally see that.
People were surprised when they learned that just on Twitter. Like, wait, Sheasel does not look 6'2". There's no way this is correct.
No, I can see that.
Do you think your main character, as we wrap this up, Ethan, is going to come from this last game here? Or is there too much else going on in this round?
I'm going to go with another of those out-of-the-box picks.
Okay.
So why don't you make your pick first?
I like to keep things on the playing oval as...
Yeah, that's boring.
But I think this week we're going to jump up to the coaching box and we're going to bring back Adam Kingsley and the stress balls. Whether it's a GWS branded ball, whether it's a stress Sharon... I think for some reason they're just going to really gravitate to that on the broadcast.
I can see that. I am going with, remember how during the preseason there was that guy eating the avocado at Icon Park?
The avocado! Thanks!
There's going to be someone spotted at a game eating some other unconventional food item. I'm not sure what it's going to be.
A whole rock melon. That's cantaloupe.
Oh. I could see that. Or or someone eating something that needs to be peeled without peeling it.
Raw potato? Nah.
It's like eat a banana, including the peel. I don't know, someone's going to be eating something strange.
When we were just thinking like something weird in California, it would be like somebody eating an entire artichoke.
Artichokes are not good.
Okay, I think you just haven't had them right yet.
No, they smell bad.
You got a lot to learn, my son.
They smell bad. I just don't want to go near them. Don't like them. Never have.
More for me then. I love that when you're on the Central Coast, Monterey area, there's this one spot, I think, off Highway 1 where like one exit takes you to Castroville and one takes you to Watsonville. It's just like artichokes or strawberries and Brussels sprouts. Take your pick. I would probably go for the strawberries still.
I would too. You know the drill. We're on Twitter at Americans Footy.
That's already way longer than a quarter of a second.
We're also on YouTube and Instagram and some stuff.
I'm on Twitter at BenjaminHK01.
Brian Harambe, who you might have just heard his bell. He's cleaning himself. He's on Instagram exclusively, a cat named Brian. I am on Twitter at Castle Media. And to round out this episode, I have 3 things.
Nitwit, blubber, and oddment without tweak?
No, they are 3 things that have nothing to do with each other.
Fire away.
Number 1, I have just learned that Adam Saad's injury is going to keep him out about 6 weeks, while the McGovern and Chair injuries are each about 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Number 2, Australians and the British need to get better at naming vegetables. It's not rocket, it's arugula. It's not cos lettuce, it's romaine lettuce.
Cos.
C-O-S, I guess, because there's a Greek island called Kos.
Okay.
And number 3, I have to poop.